The teaching that you're about to hear this morning is part of our year-long campaign that we are calling the Year of Biblical Literacy. You can find out more over on our website at midtownbiblicalliteracy.com, and there you can find reading plans, resources, podcast episodes, all in an effort to help us raise our understanding of the Bible. So with that in mind, enjoy this teaching.
My enemies trample me all day long.
My God, why have you forsaken me?
Taste and see that the Lord is good.
Can I sit here?
I do not sit with the deceitful, nor do I associate with hypocrites.
Yet again, you ruining everything that I tried.
My bones suffer agony as my foes taught me.
Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Taylor Schombert. I have the pleasure of serving on staff here as our Director of Student Ministries. We actually had a really good day yesterday with our students. Any middle schoolers in the room who went with us? No, I think they're all starting back in Midtown. I saw them. My mistake. They're back in Midtown. Riggs is over here. How was it, Riggs? It was pretty fun. We were out on the lake. We were tubing. We were boating. We had a really, really good time. We've actually had a really good summer full of events for all of our students. And I've been having a blast. And I don't know what you guys have been up to, what vacations, staycations, anything that you have been doing. But I hope you have been having as much fun as I have this summer. Something else this summer that I really enjoyed is I went with a couple of friends and saw the movie Inside Out 2. Anybody else go see Inside Out 2? Kids, some of y'all went and saw it? Yeah. It was a pretty good movie, y'all. I'll tell you, after years of putting out mid movies, okay, Pixar finally knocked it out of the park again. The animation is beautiful. The story was very compelling. And it's showing because it's now the highest grossing Pixar movie of all time. I know, isn't that crazy? And so with that, it's bringing to the forefront of our culture our emotions. It's putting on the front stage of what's on our tongues, the things that are going on within our head. And what I think that both Inside Out movies, so if you haven't seen Inside Out 2, Inside Out 1 does this very same thing, is it showcases for us how strong our emotions actually are. Our emotions are very strong. They have big muscles. And a lot of us are really okay with that fact when the emotions of joy and happiness and peace are the ones that are flexing those muscles. But it's a totally different story, isn't it? When anxiety and depression and sadness and fear and worry are the ones that are using their strong muscles to bully our minds. If you've gone around with any of those emotions in your brain, you know that they can leave you sad and frustrated and with no hope and slinking out of the ring of life and wanting to just get back into bed again, not to think about them, not to face them. Because feelings are big and emotions are strong. And so without spoiling Inside Out 2 for you, I kind of want to build on this idea that emotions are strong. We see that in the first movie, we see it in the second movie. But something the second movie does is it connects these strong emotions that we feel with what we believe to be true. Our beliefs, our sense of self is what the movie calls it. And so the movie follows the protagonist, Riley. She's now a teenage girl. And with that comes more complex emotions than you see in that first movie. Chief of which is a bundle of frazzled energy named anxiety. And again, no spoilers, anxiety is really, really strong. And she has a lot of power on Riley, particularly with what she is feeling and with what she believes to be true about herself, about her friends, and about everything that she is experiencing. And in our text for today, Psalm 77, you can flip on over there, we'll be there in a second. We see a very similar character who isn't Riley, but whose name is Asaph. And he is a Levite priest in the court of David. And he is facing this tension about what he is experiencing emotionally and what he believes to be true. What he believes to be true about God, about himself, and about the world around him. And in this chapter, we're going to see that Asaph is allowing his negative emotions to go all over the place. But by the end of this psalm, we're going to see that something has changed, that the forceful feelings of sadness and anxiety that are dominant in the first few verses begin to give way to feelings of joy, to peace, and to optimism. And I'm sure that you, like me, would like to see this very same change in your life anytime that you experience strong, controlling, negative emotions, such as anxiety, depression, sadness, fear, hate. And I think that this is one of the reasons why the Psalms are so important for our spiritual formation, is that they give us this language of what does it look like to bring our emotional lives to God. The Psalms are full of chapter after chapter of people bringing their emotions to God. It gives us language for how we actually feel. And so studying the Psalms helps us to bring our emotions to God, a place where God can then shape them into a way that glorifies him and benefits us. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, our emotions. So buckle up, let's get ready. But before we kind of get to this path of talking forward of how we can change from negative controlling emotions to a path forward of freedom where God comforts us, I actually want to lay some groundwork. I want to kind of look at our culture. I want to kind of look to how do we individually arrive at this place like Asaph does, where emotions are controlling us, where emotions are being fed and it's detrimental to us. So open up Psalm 77, and we're going to look at the first two verses. Psalm 77:1 says this. It says, I cry aloud to God, and he will hear me. In the day of my trouble, I seek the Lord. The specific context of what is happening in the psalm isn't given, is it? But rather, we receive this phrase, the day of my trouble, a description that can match many situations that all of us will find ourselves in life. And so the psalmist Asaph, he's facing this time of trouble and in his life, and because of that, his troubles are affecting his feelings, and they're starting to run wild. Verse 2. In the day of my trouble, I seek the Lord. In the night, my hand is stretched out without wearying. My soul refuses to be comforted. When I remember God, I moan. When I meditate, my spirit faints. Selah. You hold my eyelids open. I am so troubled that I cannot speak. I consider the days of old, the years long ago. I said, let me remember my song in the night. Let me meditate in my heart. Then my spirit made a diligent search. Will the Lord spurn forever and never again be favorable? Has his steadfast love forever ceased? Are his promises at an end for all time? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he in anger shut up his compassion? Selah. In these verses, we find a man who is feeling distressed, depressed, anxious, helpless, unloved, forgotten. Have you ever found yourself there too? Although these emotions are hard ones to experience, notice in these verses that Asaph does not hide from them, but he freely expresses them. And I think it is important for us to remember here at the get-go of this sermon that God created emotions because he himself is an emotional God. He feels them, he has them, and you and I, we are made in his image. So at their core, emotions are not intrinsically bad, but they're actually good. But we all know that the reality of living now in a world full of sin is that our emotions can function and affect us in ways that God did not originally intend them to do. And if we're not careful, our emotions can begin to control us, just like they're controlling Asaph in these verses. See here that they are affecting his thought life. They're beginning to distort his view of God. In verses 7-9, his emotions leave him wondering whether God is bad, whether God has changed, abandoned him, broken his promises, is running empty on his mercy. You see, feelings have taken the reins of his brain, and Asaph is not in control anymore. His emotions are taking control of him. Here's something I learned in a counseling class about negative emotions. I do student ministry, but you guys may not know, I actually have a degree in counseling. So I love all things kind of thinking about how we feel and what we think about it. But here's what I learned. is that our emotions can take control of us in one of two ways that are on opposite ends of the spectrum. And that is, we can feed negative emotions in our lives by submitting to them or by bottling them up. Both of these responses feed negative feelings of anxiety, depression, hate, whatever it may be. And so here's what I mean then by submitting and bottling. The best analogy I have ever heard to describe submitting to emotions is that people are prone to treat their emotions like a balloon. They blow it up, they pinch it at the neck, and then they let it fly. They let it loose. And that balloon zips and bobs and goes wherever it wants to. And so our emotions, as we are feeling them, are filling that balloon. And then if we submit to them, we just let go and we let them take it wherever they want to go, inconsiderate of whatever environment is around us, whatever person is in front of us. And by this, I want you to know I'm not just describing these rage fest emotions of like minute-long tirades against someone. I'm talking about those moments when you get home from work, you sit down on the couch, you're ready to relax, and you hear your spouse from the other room say, "Can you help me with dinner?" And it intrinsically, just deep down in your soul, you let out a frustrating, "Can I just sit here for a minute?" I don't know if you've been there. I've been there. And it's deep. There's history there. There's something more working than just the request that was made to you from your spouse. You're allowing your emotions to take control of you in that moment. And blindly listening and submitting to your emotions is actually becoming increasingly popular in our therapeutic culture. The latest books, the latest blogs and gurus, they say things like, just listen to your heart. Heart wants what the heart wants. Be true to yourself. You have to do whatever makes you happy. In our culture, we line up like Mandalorians and we go, this is the way. And if you subscribe to this philosophy towards your emotions, one of your favorite things to say when your emotions are questioned is, well, that's just how I feel. What you're really communicating is, I feel this way, therefore I have to express it because I'm obeying my emotions. I have to obey them. But I want to be an anti-Mandalorian and I want to say, this is not the way. There's a better path forward for us. I love the way that Christian counselor Alistair Groves, what he says in response to this idea in our culture. He says this. He says to place your feelings ahead of the quality of your character, ahead of the faithfulness of your obedience to God, ahead of the depth of your relationship with God and others, even to place your feelings ahead of the feelings of others is the opposite of what Scripture calls us to. You see, your emotions don't have to run wild like a balloon with the air let out. In fact, they shouldn't. Psalm 77, we'll see here shortly, offers us a better way to engage our emotions than just blindly submitting to them. But before we get to that, I want to switch gears real quick. Something a little bit more sinister, sometimes even something a little bit more accepted within Christian cultures, which is bottling our emotions. Because some of us are prone to do that too, and it's just as bad for us as blindly submitting them. And so we do this by being an emotional Elsa. I know I've made like 3 Disney references already. I'm a student guy, it's contractually obligated, okay? But we're an emotional Elsa, right? We conceal, don't feel, put on a show, let it go. Just don't do it. And what we're doing there is we actually run the risk of never giving an appropriate emotional response to things that actually need an appropriate emotional response. Because some things need you to engage your emotions, to feel that sadness or that fear or that worry because they're communicating something good to us. So sometimes we need to feel them, don't need to bottle them. Because bottling is not the answer. It feeds negative emotions because it leaves them alone. We're not dealing with them. And so at the best, bottling is just a temporary solution for us. Because you can bottle your emotions all you want, but eventually they're going to leak out. Maybe they leak out slowly, where you just gradually become a bitter, resentful, passive-aggressive type of person. Language I've noticed that I use whenever this is the case is I may say things like, you never, you always. I haven't addressed something with a friend or with a spouse, and so I become resentful and bitter in that. Or maybe your emotions, when you bottle them, they burst out suddenly, all at once. You just bottle your emotions for so long that you eventually hit a point where they explode out of you. And so your emotions aren't necessarily a balloon that's being let loose, but a beach ball that you've tried to put underwater that eventually wants to make its way out. You guys have seen that maybe this summer at the pool. Maybe your kids have done it. They grab a beach ball, throw it under the water, try to hold it down for as long as they want to. But eventually that ball, I was about to say balloon, that ball wants to make its way out of the water, doesn't it? And wants to explode with force. And your emotions are the very same way. You can hold them down for only so long because they want to make their way out. So whether you're prone to submission, to bottling, to treating them like a balloon or like a beach ball, how then do we not allow our emotions to control us? What's the path forward for us? Does God provide us a way that is better than submission and bottling? He does. And Psalm 77 is going to teach us that because emotions are strong, we engage them by pouring out our hearts to God, by quieting our soul, and by remembering who God is, what he's done, and what he promises. So here's point number one for us is that first line that I said. It's because emotions are strong, engage them by pouring out your heart to God. Go back with me and see verse 1 and notice that who these verses are directed to. They're directed to God. Asa feels negative emotions and chooses to bring them to God. He is open and honest and raw with God about how he feels and the way his emotions are being experienced. And I think with that, there are some beautiful truths to be learned. That telling God exactly how you feel is permissible. You can let God know what you are experiencing. We have the freedom to express our emotions to God, to acknowledge the impact of troubles on our life, and to explore our pain with him. And in fact, it's not only permissible, but we see time after time in the Psalms where it's actually prescribed to us by God as the remedy for when we feel like emotions are controlling us. God wants for you to pour out your heart to him. Psalm 62:8 puts it so great when it says, "Trust in him at all times, O people, pour out your heart before God. God is a refuge for us." Pour out your heart to him. What the book of Psalms is teaching us is that a form of prayer is expressing our emotions in a Godward direction. A form of prayer is expressing our emotions in a Godward direction. It's that first step of humility and relinquishing control of our emotions and admitting to God, this is where I'm at, help. It's like when your kid comes to you and they don't exactly know how to express that they need help, but they just put their arms up and they say, I need help. Maybe they just start crying and you instinctively know as a parent that I need to rush to them and help them. They're experiencing something has happened. I want to be there for them. When we just tell God, this is where I'm at. I may not have the language to share where I'm at. I may not know exactly where this is coming from, but I just go to God and I say, God, help. This is where I'm at. I need you. I'm experiencing something. I'm feeling something and I need you. You see all the griefs, sorrows, fears, misgivings, hopes, cares, anxieties, all of them can be brought to God. He does not turn you away when you bring them to him. Any emotions that may disquiet your soul and fill your mind, we have the freedom to pour out to him. He invites us with all of our mess and with all of our questions. I think it's important for us to know too that God knows our emotions anyways. He's an all-knowing God. He knows exactly what you're feeling. So why wouldn't we go to him with it? Why wouldn't we clue him in? Why wouldn't we seek comfort and care from the God of the universe who is big enough to handle all of our emotions? Because he is stronger and he is a better place to bring our emotions than any friend, any life group, any pastor, any spouse. God is the one to whom we should first run whenever we experience negative emotions. And I think that's important here to recognize is whenever I'm saying that we should express our emotions, that this is to God, not necessarily to one another. We should share with one another our emotions, but never to this same degree of rawness and honesty and ferociousness that we share them to God, because no person here is God. No person here can handle them in the way that God can. Whenever we share our emotions with one another, we need wisdom. We need some caution to make sure that we avoid harm and that we don't hurt the person that we're talking to. the person that we're talking about. We want to use that wisdom, but that's a sermon for another day that I could dive into for a long, long time of what that looks like. But what I want us to see here is that we have such freedom to vent to God with all of our emotions and what we are feeling. And so with this point, I actually have a challenge for you, and it's something that everyone in this room can do. The challenge is this: shorten the distance between the appearance of controlling negative emotions in your life and when you go to God in prayer. Every one of us can shorten that distance. Every single one of us. Maybe you're here in the room and you say, I just never tell God how I feel. I don't think he cares to hear that. I want to challenge you. Go to him. Let him know occasionally, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm experiencing. This is what's happening. Maybe you go to him once a week in prayer time and you kind of let him know, what would it look like if you start winning a couple times a week? What would it look like if instead of every day you went every hour, and instead of every hour you went every minute that you felt it, and rather than going the minute after you feel it, you just instinctively go, maybe even to the point to where you are just emotionally in tune with situations that are going to bring an emotional response, that before you even experience them, you bring them to God in prayer and you say, I know I'm going to see my family. I know I'm going to see this coworker. I know I'm going to go into this place. God, would you help me before I even go there to have self-control over my emotions and to not be overwhelmed and controlled by them? All of us are in need of shortening the distance between when we experience negative controlling emotions and when we go to God in prayer. Because shortening that distance is a mark of Christian maturity. And I want you to know too that this is actually inside of you what you want. You want to go to him. It's good for you. It's the place where you can receive comfort when bad feelings and thoughts are waging war against you. It's like that old hymn says, oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. That includes your emotions. Carry them to him in prayer. So what's keeping you from coming to him? Is it self-reliant pride, thinking you can figure it all out on your own? Is it distraction where you just you fill your schedule so much that you don't even want to feel anything? So you want to keep everything surface level. You don't want to go down deep. Whatever it may be, root that out, because emotions are strong and you need to pour out your heart to God. And all that leads us then to our second point, is that because emotions are strong, engage them by quieting your soul. Let's go back to Psalm 77 real quick, where we left Asaph in verse 8. He was in a place where his emotions are running wild. They begin to cloud his thoughts, distort his view of God. But in verse 9, in the midst of his emotional onslaught of question, he utters one word: Selah. This word is used throughout the Psalms and may be confusing. I never knew exactly what it was for a long time. But what it simply means is pause. Stop. Be silent for a second. Sit still. If you're in the room today and as I'm talking about these negative emotions, maybe it's bringing an emotional response out of you, what I say to you is hit pause. Quiet your soul. That's what Psalms 131:2 says. It says, but I have calmed and quieted my soul. That's what I mean whenever I say hit pause, is we are in need of quieting our souls to let God in to those situations. I know this is kind of silly. It's just a little silly, but can everybody take their hand? And can you put it right in front of your face, like right in front of your nose? And notice two things while you hold your hand there for just a second. How much less you can see what is in front of you and how unclear your hand is and out of focus it is. Now, without punching your neighbor in front of you, put it out to arm's length. Bring it out in front. And notice now how much more you can see in front of you and how much more clear your hand is. Everybody, you can put your hands down. I know it's a silly illustration, but I think what this does is it highlights the reality of what hitting pause can do for us. By stopping and taking a moment of silence, what it does is it helps to move our emotions from out in front of us, where it is distorting our view of the situation and distorting our view of what we are actually feeling. Because our emotions have this nasty tendency to point us inwards, to only want to see ourselves and our experience and our feelings. But when we invite God in, when we say Selah, when we say pause, what we are doing is we are now able to focus on actually what's going on in our head because we need to hit pause. We need to get out of our heads and into our bodies. You guys know we are all embodied creatures, right? And God has given us our bodies as a way to help us. And so whenever you are feeling strong anxiety, in those moments, what you need to do is you need to breathe. You need to go outside, to sleep, to work out, take a cold plunge. All of these bodily experiences help us to physically press, pause, and turn towards God as the giver of all good things. And once we hit pause with our bodies, we can begin to allow God in to change us. And then rather than seeing God through the negative lens of our troubles and feelings, we can now begin to see our troubles and our feelings from God's perspective. Because emotions are strong, engage them by quieting your soul. Back to Psalm 77. We're going to read the remaining verses. And notice here how the tone begins to shift. Then I said, I will appeal to the years of the right hand of the Most High. I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your wonders of old. I will ponder all your works, meditate on your mighty deeds. Your way, O God, is holy. What God is great like our God? You are the God who works wonders. You have made known your might among the peoples. You with your arm redeemed your people, the children of Jacob and Joseph, Selah. When the waters saw you, O God, when the waters saw you, they were afraid. Indeed, the deep trembled. The clouds poured out water. The skies gave forth thunder. Your arrows flashed on every side. The crash of your thunder was in the whirlwind. Your lightnings lighted up the world. The earth trembled and shook. Your way was through the sea, your path through the great waters, yet your footprints were unseen. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Here in the second half of Psalm 77, Asaph begins to fight his negative facts, thoughts, and feelings with other facts, thoughts, and feelings. Where the fact was once, I have problems, it's now God is faithful. Where the thoughts were once, God has abandoned me and is far off, they are now, God is in control and will guide me like he's done time and time again. Where his feelings were once despair and hopelessness, it's now confidence and optimism. This teaches us our third point, is that because emotions are strong, engage them by remembering who God is, what he has done, and what he promises. A lot of you in the room have kids, and I'm sure that you've done this with your little ones before, or you'll have a toy and you'll be playing it with them, and you'll kind of put it in front of their face, and then at one point you put it behind your back and you bring out your hands and the toy's no longer there, and they look at you, kid, and they're confused. They're like, where'd the toy go? Maybe it elicits an emotional response. They start crying. They start getting angry because you took the toy away from them, and in their minds, that toy is gone forever. It's never coming back. But what you do next proves that you are the David Blaine of your kid's life, and you pull that toy back out and you're a magician, and they're like, whoa, it's back. The toy's not gone. It's here. And you can still do that as your kid gets older, but you know what they're going to do? They're eventually going to start trying to look behind your back, trying to find the toy. And in real time, what you are seeing is that your child is learning something known as object permanence. That though something is not present, that does not mean that it is not still there. That though you cannot see it, it still exists. And when it comes to our emotional lives, all of us are in need of spiritual object permanence. To know that even though the troubles around us and the emotions inside us want to tell us a false story, that God is bad, that he's changed, abandoned us, broken his promises, that there is a truth beyond our emotions. That the truth of who God is and what he has done and what he promises, truth that we can only find in Scripture. You see, sometimes our feelings can make us believe things that simply are not true. Our emotions can lie to us. And so I think it's important for us to know here that whenever there's a clash between what you are feeling and the truth of God is always right. It's always reality. It's always true. What we are in need of when negative emotions flex their strong muscles is to remember. And that's exactly what Asaph does in these final verses of Psalm 77. He remembers God's work in creation, his work in redemption and salvation. And as Asaph recalls all of God's great works amongst his people throughout generations and generations, his emotions begin to change. I don't know if you noticed this, but in those final verses we read, there isn't any emotional language. He doesn't reference his emotions. By this, we can't infer that necessarily the troubles have stopped. We can't infer that he's no longer feeling some fear and some worry and all those sort of things. But what we can see is that now he is allowing true thoughts about who God is to direct his emotions and not allow his emotions to direct his thoughts about God. Rather than seeking control, he is now seeking comfort in the God of the universe. Comfort in who God is, what he has done, and what he promises. Because a lot of us in the room, we may think that we want control of our emotions. But what a lot of us are actually in need of is comfort. In Matthew 11, 28 through 30, Jesus gives us this invitation to come to him and to receive that comfort. Read with me in verse 28. It says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." You see, the warm comfort of God is the antidote to the cold, clenching fist of controlling emotions. Who he is, what he has done, and what he will do are comforts to our soul. In just a few minutes, we're going to end our gathering like we do every week by singing, by praying, by eating. And during that time, I want to invite you, if there are emotions that you are feeling today that you come into this gathering with, during that time, pour out your hearts to God. We'll have people available, like we always do, to pray for you if you just need someone else to pray over you in those moments. But pour out your hearts to God. But before we do, I kind of want to walk us through those final two steps of quieting our soul and remembering who God is, what he has done, and what he promises. And so right now, I want to invite you all to be in a posture to receive that. And so you can stop taking notes, put your Bibles down, put your notebooks down. Kind of like we did last week when Brandon was preaching, kind of sit up straight, kind of in your chair. Relax your body a little bit. What I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes. Keep them closed for the next few minutes. And just real quick with me, take in a deep breath through your nose. Hold it. Breathe out through your mouth. We're going to do that one more time. Take in a deep breath through your nose. Hold it. Breathe out through your mouth. With your eyes closed, hear this truth of Scripture. Psalm 46:10 says this. It says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." Psalm 55:22, "Cast your burdens on the Lord. He will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved." Psalm 147:3, "He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds." Psalm 46:1, "God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble." Psalm 4:8, "In peace I will both lie down and sleep. For you, O Lord, make me dwell in safety." Psalm 34:18, "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit." Psalm 116:1 through 2, "I love the Lord because he has heard my voice and my pleas for mercy. Because he inclined his ear to me, therefore I will call on him as long as I live." Psalm 119:50, "This is my comfort in my affliction, that your promises give me life." Psalm 23:4, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me."